My name is Rich Tarani. I'm the CEO of TMC with Crossfire Media and Phil at home. We have put on this show together, our partners, and we're thrilled to have you all here, so thank you for being here. I just wanted to make one brief announcement and let you know that we will have lunches served to you at these tables, so you don't need to get up and go anywhere. Lunches will be brought to you at the conclusion of this session. And I am the co-moderator, and I would like to have my other co-moderator come on up here. Tzachi, come on up and join me, please, and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Tzachi Levent-Levy, and don't worry about saying my name. I'm a product manager at Amdocs, and I have an independent blog called Blog Geek Me that deals with WebRTC. So I want to ask you something, Rich. What does it mean prime time? What exactly it is that we're trying to frame here in this specific session?
Now, do you want my answer or Phil's answer? Because I know both.
Let's go for yours.
My answer? Okay, so mine's similar to Phil's. And prime time is, can you actually make a business on WebRTC, or is it just something fun and exciting just to play around with? So is it a serious business tool, something you can build a business on, or is it something that's just kind of like a hobbyist toy, which they used to call VoIP in 1996 and 1997?
Okay. So I think it's time to bring the panelists.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Panelists, come on out. Come on up. Don't be shy. All right, so we're going to go in order from left to right. Let you guys figure out what that is, left to right. And each one of you introduce yourselves and give us 30 seconds about your background.
Hi, I'm Doug Pelton from Priologic. I'm the CEO. We're about a 10-year-old company, and just the last year we've been heavily involved with WebRTC. We've had a team working on products. Started with an EasyRTC open source project, then EasyRTC Enterprise, and then at the show here we presented Talk.com. So it's been quite a ride. Really, that side of the company is kind of a startup, so it's very interesting.
Hello, my name is Jan Linden. I'm a product manager on the Chrome team at Google. Been involved with WebRTC since before it was started, so we kind of started. So I am very excited about this. It's tremendously exciting to see all these people showing up. Very recently we started this project and we got this far so quickly. So.
I'm Ian Small. I'm CEO of TalkBox. We make the OpenTalk platform that makes WebRTC easy for developers and enterprise to deploy for applications that matter.
I'm Ben Strong. I'm with VLine. We're a cloud-hosted WebRTC platform as a service with globally distributed infrastructure. Basically, we take care of all the back-end you need to run a WebRTC application. We also have a very rich client-side JavaScript framework that allows you to do, user interfaces very quickly. I've been working with WebRTC since the day that Jan dropped the code on the web back in July of 2011, contributor to the WebRTC project, and have had customers running business-critical applications on Chrome stables since the beginning of the year.
Hi, and I'm Slava Zhekov. I'm CTO for Genesis, and we develop software for customer service, connecting consumers with the enterprises. And we see WebRTC as a very cool technology that delivers value in customer service.
Excellent.
Okay, so I'd like to start off with, an easy question, and that would be for Jan this time, because I'm interested in your answer. What's left in the standardization area around WebRTC? What's still missing there?
Was it me?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. It's so hard to hear here. The acoustics is absolutely horrible. But Yeah, so what's key issues remaining for standardization? It's just basically get the things done that we're working on. We're working on all the right things, and everything is moving. There are certain things that will pop up that will be important to discuss, like is the way we're negotiating the signaling today. Is that the way you're going to be in the future? That's an important thing, but we don't need that to get there. Obviously, a mandatory video codec would be really, really nice to have, like we discussed in the previous session. But again, we can still go ahead and get there. So I tend to believe that we are on the right path for everything, and we just need to finish up what we're doing, and then we can add from there. So I don't see any key issues that will stop anything from happening.
Yeah, I think from the standpoint of applying it, and I think, Ben, you're probably in the same camp, it's less about the standardization and more about getting the standard actually implemented and into the endpoints. Like the TCP support that's in Chrome is great. We don't have it in Firefox yet. It's sort of frustrating. Codec issues. But I think actually the standard itself is in pretty good shape in terms of where it's at. It's more a question of driving it through into the endpoints and getting all the browsers on board.
Yeah, so I definitely agree with Ian on that. And I think that it's kind of important to remember that this is a web standard, and that's different from a lot of the other IETF standards, because web standards evolve a lot over time, and they're really never done. There's HTML5 now, there's going to be an HTML6. HTML5 isn't even standardized yet, but it hasn't stopped people from using it. So I think that all that matters is that can you use it? Do you have the core features you need there? And yeah, they're there today. There are some things that would be nice to have around signaling features you need for multi-party support, but you can get it done today.
Support very much the same. The standard is good enough. It will evolve, but it's already good enough for the use. We would like to see a little bit more enterprise-specific features, such as quality of service. It will improve adoption inside the enterprises, in our opinion.
You want to take that one too? Go ahead.
No, I'm good. There's quite a few answers there, and I think they cover it well.
So we'll go to the next one on interop. What interoperability issues need to be solved?
I'd like Firefox to work better with Google Chrome. And I think it's close. You know, we tried our stuff on Firefox today, and it was good. And I think there's a little bit of turn server work to be done. So those would be my two.
Yeah, well, obviously there are things to be done, and as said, there will be evolving standards and everything. But I agree, it's very close to working on those two platforms. But the other issue I would say is other platforms and other browsers. That's kind of the interoperability issue. Firefox and Chrome, I don't worry about that at all. But getting the other browsers to support it, and also how we handle that we have a little bit to work on to get the native implementations to be fully interoperable as well, but that's very close.
Yeah, I think from the standpoint of an end user of that 400 million, 800 million, pick the number, the interop is actually in a really good place right now. I think if you're in deep with the standard, like most of us are, the interop's not quite as clean as you would like it to be. And so if you build a native library, then you do special things for Chrome and special things for Firefox, and you make it all work. But to the end user, it's actually pretty good, and that's the interoperability that matters. I think the other variations matter less to us. As you talked about being a web standard, it's software. It matters a lot more if you're a hardware vendor and trying to implement this thing. It's probably more painful than it is for us to deal with those issues.
Yeah, so I agree with what Doug said there, because from a practical standpoint, Chrome and Firefox, they work great today. You look under the hood at what we have to do to make it work, it's not pretty. But if you look under the hood at jQuery, what they do to make the DOM APIs work portably across browsers, that's not pretty either. And that's just the way the web works. So, you know, the elephant in the room is the codec standard, and you know what's going to happen there in Safari and Internet Explorer. So, you know, that is the real issue in our minds.
For us, it's less important because we connect consumers with the enterprises, and interoperability between browsers is less important.
But if I actually look at it, and that's to you guys, we're talking today about Safari and Chrome, and that's about only half the market out there. There are 2 more browsers, and I've got a question that was asked in the previous session that I've been on, and the answer, I gave an answer. I want to hear your answer about that. How do you actually manage the fact that Internet Explorer and Safari doesn't support WebRTC today?
Let me just say something so Jan doesn't have to say it. I don't know how you count half the market, but it's not based on any browser stats that I've seen. So it's a lot more than half the market. That's the good news. The bad news is there are 2 big holes. Safari is unimportant, relatively speaking, as a browser, but it's very important because it comes along with a platform, and that's what actually makes it interesting. And you know, IE is a real challenge, and I think Google Chrome Frame has been a good way around the IE challenge as kind of a stopgap. I think if as Google evolves its position on Chrome Frame, Microsoft doesn't come to the party fast enough, you're just going to see a lot of us punching out IE plugins to make things work, and it's going to be painful, but it'll work for end users in the end. Sorry, I wanted to say the thing about Google, so you didn't have to.
No, thanks for doing that, but I would agree, yes. And I agree with everything else you said there. It's but also important to note about Safari. It's a very important on the mobile side, but actually the way it looks today is more important with native apps there. So that's right now we'll address that easily by providing the support for native apps on Safari and Android.
Yeah, one thing we haven't touched on too much is the mobile browser. And I think that's where Safari could really come to the party and put something on iOS. I'm not aware of the development at Apple. Maybe somebody else is, but they seem, I was really disappointed not to see them call something out at their Worldwide Developers Conference. So anyway.
So I wanted to add that we built a plugin that added Safari and Internet Explorer support very early on, back before there was even Chrome and Firefox support. And we decided not to release it because we found in practice that our customers basically fell into 2 camps. There were the ones who felt like video conferencing was a really mission-critical feature, and they really didn't have a problem telling their users they had to use Chrome or Firefox. And then you have the ones for whom it's not a mission-critical feature, and they're okay with the fact that only half, or I would say it's actually more than half, because I think when you take into account the users who actually have webcams and use video conferencing, it's even more skewed towards Firefox and Chrome. So if 25% of their users can't use it, it's okay. So it winds up that both of those sides are okay with where it is today. We'd love for it to be supported elsewhere, but it's okay right now.
There's one other part here, a minor point, is that people are getting more and more used to having more than one browser, not only us here, but actually even my parents have 2 browsers because they know some things work better on one and some on the other. So it's not necessarily such a huge, it's much less of a problem to have another browser than installing a plugin for a lot of people.
I think the one elephant in the room should be acknowledged is probably that the enterprise intranet environment in like a more traditional enterprise, not in the Silicon Valley-ish companies we all work in, are much more likely to have a one browser, locked down, everything frozen environment. And that just is. But the fact of the matter is, that's just a time problem no matter what, because even if Microsoft had already implemented full WebRTC support that was interoperable with Firefox and Chrome, it still wouldn't actually be on most of those desktops because they're all still stuck on IE, pick the number that is in place in that enterprise. And that's not a bad thing, that just is the way it is. And so part of that, the multiple browser thing doesn't help actually because they can't install another browser because they don't have control. It's fine with consumers. That enterprise intranet target is just a little harder to get to in those fixed environments.
So I think we covered that one extensively. I'm thinking that Question 4 has been answered, kind of indirectly or directly. So why don't we go to question 5, and that is the first million-user WebRTC application. What will it be?
One of the opportunities for that application might be, at least how we see it, is a click to contact our enterprise. Considering that WebRTC delivers no plugin, any device type of capability that customers can contact their banks or other enterprises they deal with, it has a pretty good opportunity to be the first million customers where we see the demand.
I have 2 answers. The first one is social chat for cats. It's going to be really big. The second one, more pragmatically, million users means it has to be social, it has to be consumer in some way. First WebRTC app, I'll probably go with the new Google Universal Communicator solution, most likely.
So it's going to be a line extension of somebody who already has 1 million customers. So whoever that is, it could be Facebook, Twitter. Google has lots of customers. They probably find a way.
Yeah, I think the really interesting question is, what is the all-new WebRTC app that is going to have 1 million users, and what does that look like? And I think the answer to that is that it looks absolutely nothing like any video conferencing app you've ever used up to this point. It doesn't look like Skype. It doesn't look like Hangouts. I have no idea what it looks like. But the really powerful part about WebRTC is that you can build, you put it in the hands of millions of developers, and you're going to see massively parallel experimentation. And they're going to come up with something that is what Twitter was to the web before it, except for video. And I'm excited to see what that is, but I have no idea what it is.
Yeah, that's a great point. And WebRTC, that's all what it, for me, this is really what it's about. WebRTC should just fade away. That's not, I don't care about that. It's a tool that is part of the whole web where you can do all these amazing things. And as you said, and especially with the help of companies like you that make it really easy for any web developer that doesn't know anything about voice or video, maybe they know something about real-time data, but they get these tools in their hand and then they can build something truly fantastic that we don't see today why or how that would look like. So that's really the promise of WebRTC.
Okay, so if this is such a great tool, then who's going to be the first large website that isn't Google that is going to adopt it? And to what specific use case are they going to do it for?
Here. They have 3 examples up on the screen here, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So I'll take each of them apart and leave them in a heap on the ground. And then we can come up with another answer that's better. Facebook will switch to WebRTC when Skype does. End of that question. They have no need to adopt WebRTC. They have a partnership with Skype. They're the only guys on the planet who have that partnership. Skype will eventually adopt WebRTC. It will happen. It's just going to happen on their time frame, in their time scale. There's no question about it. LinkedIn will adopt WebRTC when LinkedIn decides to get in the middle of the actual live recruiting process. It's something LinkedIn had been thinking about for 2 years. It's not a technology problem, it's a business model question, whether or not they want to be actually in the live part of the recruiting process as opposed to the sourcing part of the recruiting process. So that's not an issue of communication or not. You can't live chat on LinkedIn for the same reason. Why, if I can't do IM, why would I ever be in the WebRTC business? And Twitter is an asynchronous communication system. WebRTC is a synchronous communication system. The models are fundamentally different. You're not going to see synchronous communication replace asynchronous communication. What you're going to see is WebRTC replace other forms of synchronous communication or data communication.
As to when exactly it's going to happen, my guess is that it's going to happen this year, because I think basically as of now that we have good support in Chrome and Firefox, the technology is ready. And one of these guys is pretty soon going to realize that being the first one on the block, or the second one on the block after Google, to have this technology is going to be a pretty major competitive advantage for them. And the window when they have that exclusively is shrinking. So I think it's going to happen sooner than a lot of people think.
Let's have a fight and talk about it.
We're on to the next one?
Okay. Dueling moderators, come on.
What's the inflection point for WebRTC on mobile?
H.264 support.
Hardware codecs for VP8.
I go with H.264 support. I'll take the hardware codecs for VP8 that are actually in the phones that are in 100 million people's hands, but.
So I should at least mention how many of the current chips that are going into the smartphones have full VP8 support. Many of them both encode and decode, and they're from Samsung, Broadcom, Marvell, NVIDIA, all of these guys. The top chips are supporting this. So that does address the VP8 versus H.264 there. But in general, it's a tough, even with hardware support, it's a tough platform to do really good video. Voice is no particularly big problem, but video is a really tough thing to do really high quality. So we're going to have to continue to work really hard on getting it more optimized, better, finding out all the quirks of the networks that kills us at times. But also, as long as you have a good fallback, going back to audio or limited video, you have a really good solution, and that's basically where we are today.
If you look at the mobile problem, there's actually a bunch of pieces. Is the phone actually strong enough? That's why we talk about hardware support one way or another. Is the device strong enough? And not is the best device money can buy strong enough. It's is the one that everybody has strong enough. The second problem is quality of service coming down the actual connection. So I'm in a strange place because TalkBox is owned by Telefonica, so sort of on both sides of this divide in terms of, quality of service. I have someone I could talk to about that. But the third one is, same problem. Most of us here in this room probably live in a major urban center that has phenomenal 4G LTE support, and actually most of the world is not in fact like that. And so even if we talk about quality of service and the fact that it's a problem, we tend to just leave as unwritten when we say, and that's on LTE. And by the way, LTE isn't everywhere yet. And so we even have to get LTE out to everywhere. What I do think is happening right now that is quite interesting is mobile being used as a roving point when there's a local Wi-Fi connection. And so mobile devices are actually being used for WebRTC applications, but a lot of the context in which they're being used is where the connectivity is through Wi-Fi, not through 3G, because that's just like a disaster area waiting to happen. It's great through 4G. I mean, my demo earlier today was on 4G, and it was reasonable. But that roving mobile, whether it's inside your house or inside your office or inside whatever, is actually very real, and it happens today. And so I think mobile can be cut in a lot of different ways when you look at what that means. It doesn't necessarily mean you're outside on a 3G connection, holding your phone up in the rain, wondering why it isn't working.
So to your point about when exactly will the devices, and the mainstream devices in particular, be capable, I think it's probably going to be just the next generation. It's not that far off. So I think that the mainstream devices probably toward the end of next year will probably all do a good job from a hardware point of view.
Yeah, and we also need to remember that the quickest growing part of mobile is the tablets, and that's where and they are more powerful in general, and they are definitely a good use case for this, while on the regular phone you have a way to communicate. So I find that as really the killer mobile app to start with.
Right.
I agree, but I have to go one more. I want to share a stat on that. So we were running a demo at the Next Web where we were using a Nexus 10. We were using a Nexus 10, and we had 3 WebRTC streams open, and we had the Nexus 10 plugged in. And the power level on the Nexus 10 was going down, even though it was actually plugged in, which was remarkable.
One way to look at it is that WebRTC is not necessarily all combination of everything that it provides. If we take a look only at some capabilities like data connection or voice without video, then suddenly even the current devices will support capabilities. And this probably is a pretty optimistic story for today. Not necessarily all use cases might include video. And even voice with some data attached to it might be very powerful.
Okay, so we bitched and whined a little bit about mobile, and then the question becomes, what are the big players in mobile are going to do? Or when are they going to join this nice convention that we have here? And I'm talking about companies on the slide and those that are not. So you have the chipset vendors, which are Qualcomm, Samsung, also Intel that isn't there. You've got the mobile operating system platforms, Microsoft and Apple. It's not only Google. And then you've got something totally different. What about companies that provide services for large enterprises like IBM? Will they join? Does it matter if they join? Where do you think they stand here?
So I think there are exactly two companies in the world that matter who haven't made their position known already. And they're the first ones on your list here. They're Apple and Microsoft. And they matter a lot. And no one else really matters because you can install Chrome on pretty much every other device out there. So.
Yeah, I think the argument is Samsung would matter because they make a lot of phones, but we're going to solve the codec problem one way or another. So it's like, we're either going to solve it with their help or without their help, but it's going to solve it on the phones. That's not actually a huge issue. I agree. The bigger issue with Apple and Microsoft is actually, if they did nothing, it would be better than if they did something completely different. And who knows, everybody who's ever played in a standardization game knows that this is a part of the process. And it doesn't necessarily slow anything down. It just makes it a little more colorful. I think Firefox coming aboard today means the clock starts ticking. And even the first two guys on the list, Apple and Microsoft, they don't have a long time to wait to decide how to play their cards.
I look at it from the demand perspective. WebRTC is free, a standard, simple, and solves very particular set of issues. There is a need for something like that. So probably it's not inconceivable to see how the standard might be a little bit adjusted to accommodate Apple and Microsoft needs, but it's really difficult to imagine how something that is simple, built in the browser, and delivering the capability that is delivered by WebRTC is not going to be accommodated, simply because there is a need for that. Does it matter? Today, in my opinion, it does not matter, because already lots of applications and lots of use cases can be satisfied with existing coverage of two browsers and so many users already out there. So. As far as I can count, it's 1.5 billion. Google announced 1 billion and Firefox 500 million. So it should be somewhere, probably through a couple of steps.
So for me, there's two browsers right now, and the other browsers will slowly lose market share if they don't pick up their socks and get in there. I can't understand why IE hasn't done something a little sooner. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of technical reasons and maybe some competitive reasons, but I'm pretty sure they're going to continue to lose market share, and if we get some compelling apps out there that work on top of WebRTC, it's going to move market share to Google from IE.
I actually just wanted to touch on that for a moment. You said competitive reasons. So basically, since the company owns Skype, I just imagine that there are conversations in the boardroom constantly about, we just spent billions of dollars on Skype. Are we going to now enable a wave of new competitors? And there are some discussions we had last night at dinner about whether or not WebRTC is going to be competitive to Skype and whether Skype's going to lose its dominant market share. And it seems like most people think that's not going to happen. But could I just get one or two people on the stage to talk to that?
I can start. Yeah, so, I mean, obviously what's really great with WebRTC is that it's putting an endpoint in the hands of billions of people, and then you provide a service based on that. And that's what Skype's value is, not their endpoint. It's the service and the contacts and everything you have there. So why would WebRTC be anything but a good thing for them? Of course, it does make it easier for someone else to build something similar, but I don't think you can just build a new Skype and compete with Skype. It needs to be part of something else. So for example, if it fits into the rest of your social network, maybe you realize I don't need Skype anymore, but you don't replace Skype with WebRTC.
Yeah, I think if you're Skype, WebRTC is a transport. It's not being fair to WebRTC, but let's take a Skype perspective on it. It's a transport. What they have is a network, and they have people. And that's really hard to do. Anybody knows who's built companies. Getting 1 million users is hard. Getting 10 million is really hard. You know, getting to Skype or Google size is virtually impossible. And so from their standpoint, WebRTC is just a transport, and I think they'll get there in time. I mean, look, you could ask the same question of Google, which is, oh, WebRTC, why doesn't Hangouts, or why didn't Hangouts run on Google? And the answer is, it will, it does, but it takes time. Just because the standard comes out is ready for doing certain things doesn't mean it's ready to actually replace an existing baked hard technology like what Skype has or what Google had deployed in Hangouts.
So I want to disagree a little bit with whether people are using Skype primarily for the contacts, because I think that's the reason why Microsoft paid $8 billion for Skype. It's the only reason I can imagine. But I think the reason why a lot of people actually use it is because it works. It's, you know, you can count on it to establish a connection pretty much no matter what. And we find that now that you can do that in WebRTC, then people are no longer as motivated to use Skype as they once were. Because, you know, there's a lot of people out there who use Skype and hate it because it's the only option they really have that works reliably.
Yeah, but to be fair, WebRTC isn't a replacement for Skype. I can say you have a WebRTC-equipped browser. You still need a solution that runs on top of it that gives you a way to dial somebody and connect to them. And that's, I think, what Jan was getting at. There's an entire stack on top of that.
Yeah, and also, I mean, to take an example from ourselves, Google Talk has been around for a long time, very stable, working as well and sometimes better than Skype, but that people didn't switch over just because it's there. So still, the value of being inside new users maybe can pick between the two, but if you're already there, you don't leave it just because there is an alternative that's the same. That's kind of my point.
So with that, thank you very much. If you could join me in giving the panelists and my co-moderator a hand. And as I said a little bit earlier, lunches will be brought out to the table, so just please stay where you are. Lunches are coming, and then the keynotes will follow. And have a great show. Thanks for being here.